Welcome to the Fab Food Lab in Independence, Kansas, where we're working to contribute to a sustainable regional food system amid the fallout of a global health crisis that disrupted all societal norms, from school and work to socializing and grocery shopping. Join us as we explore the dynamics of food production, preparation, and preservation in the context of community with an objective of self-reliance. We hope you'll benefit from our many tools and offerings, including educational classes, creative collaborations, food-centered events, and unique opportunities to connect with farmers, producers, consumers, and fellow foodies.
By My Watch, so we'll get started this morning. Thank you for joining us for the From Egg to Chick workshop. Today we'll be going over the ins and outs of incubating eggs and a little bit about how to set up the incubator. Today we'll be setting up this incubator, getting it going to incubate 6 or 7 chicken eggs. So we'll be including that this morning as well. So starting off, I'm going to talk about where you can get your eggs from. Of course, if you're going to hatch out chicks, you need the eggs first. You have a couple of different options of where to get your eggs. You can purchase them from a hatchery, or you can purchase them from an individual. If you know someone locally, maybe you have a friend that has a flock of chickens and a rooster, and you can get a few eggs from them to incubate. For those that may be new to chickens, a hen is what a female chicken is called, and a rooster is what a male chicken is referred to as. So if you're going to be getting eggs from an individual, you want to make sure those eggs are fertile so they will incubate and you'll have chicks. So you'll want to make sure that person has hens and a rooster as well. So there's a few factors that can affect hatchability that I have listed on the PowerPoint slide here, and they differ a little bit whether you are getting your eggs from a breeder or a local individual that has chickens, or if you're purchasing them from a hatchery. And if you are getting eggs from an individual, one of the main things is to consider is egg quality and embryo survival are influenced by the hen and rooster's age, health, nutrition, genetics, and stress. So if you have the option, you want to get those eggs from someone who has a younger flock of chickens, preferably hens that are only a couple years old that are being well taken care of. And stress can refer to, more commonly we think of stress as maybe there was a neighborhood dog or coyote that were bothering the chickens and stressed them out. But stress can also refer to stress from weather. So back in February, we had those couple weeks of really cold weather, and that would stress chickens as well. So if that was the case, there was any major weather changes recently, you would want to wait a couple weeks to collect those eggs to incubate. And if you choose to get eggs from a hatchery, you want to make sure you purchase them from a reputable hatchery. There are some hatcheries you can look on their website or in their catalog, and they'll say they are certified as a disease-free hatchery and participate in that program with the USDA. And that would be the route that you want to go through to make sure they're disease-free, the hatchery has good sanitation practices. And then you'll also want to make sure that you'll be home when those eggs arrive in the mail, or you'll be able to go pick them up from the post office when the post office calls you to say that they're in, so they're not maybe sitting out in the sun or in a back storage room for too long. Next up, we're going to talk about storing eggs. And this plays more of a role of if you collect eggs and you're collecting them from your own chickens, and it takes a couple days for you to get the 7 eggs or however many eggs your incubator holds that you're wanting to incubate. Storing will play a role there. Storing eggs properly delays the embryo development until you're ready to incubate them. So there's a few things you want to remember while storing eggs. The first is you want to make sure to only store them at maximum 10 days, preferably less than 10 days. And you want to maintain the temperature of where they're being stored between 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the ideal temperature for eggs to be stored at. If fertile eggs reach a temperature above 72 degrees, embryos will develop abnormally, weaken, and die, and embryos stored below the 55 degrees also have a high embryo mortality rate. So you want to make sure you store them in a room where you can control the temperature. Some people also will store them in maybe an extra fridge they're not using and adjust the temperature controls on that fridge to be between the 55 and 65 degrees. And then you also want to keep the humidity at 70 to 80%. High humidity can cause condensation to form on the eggshell and cause contamination the same way that washing would. And you want to avoid clogging those pores on the eggshell, as that can suffocate the embryo as the egg is developing. Related to storing eggs, if you're storing eggs for more than a week, you're going to need to turn or rotate the eggs. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can tilt them from side to side if you're storing them in a carton, which is recommended if you're storing them for more than a week. This allows you to tilt them so the embryo won't be only on one end of the egg and kind of keep them moving. So you can tilt them like is shown in the picture on this slide, which is you're just flipping the egg carton back and forth. And you just want to be careful when you're doing that to avoid any eggs breaking. Or the other option is you can tilt the egg carton from side to side. Maybe if you have a thick book or a box, you just put it under one end, and that is another option when it comes to tilting the eggs. And this is something that you want to do at least once a day, preferably twice a day. So maybe in the morning when you get up and you're making your coffee, you can do this, and then in the evening when you get home from work or after dinner. Okay, so we're also going to talk about selecting eggs and egg care. So when you get those eggs from the hatchery, if you purchase them, you'll want to check eggs when you get them in the mail. You don't want to incubate eggs that are cracked, misshapen, soiled, or unusually small or large. These eggs rarely hatch and have the potential to even contaminate the good eggs that are in the incubator. So you also don't want to wash or wipe the eggs. Doing this can remove the egg's protective coating and allow disease and bacteria to enter. And as I mentioned before, washing the eggs and getting that water on them can also create condensation and clog the eggshell's pores. As you can see, the eggs I have here today, I got from a friend who has chickens, and these eggs are all in good condition, are regular size. There is a little bit of size variance, but they're all normal size. And you can see here that while these eggs are in good condition, a few of the eggs do just have like a little bit of manure spots on them, which is, of course, is common when chickens lay eggs in those nesting boxes. And before you handle the eggs, you want to wash your hands to make sure you're not contaminating the eggs, and also keep the eggs covered so that they'll stay clean while you're storing them. So you can keep them covered as keeping the egg carton closed, or if you're storing them for less than 7 days and you don't have a need to rotate the eggs, you can store them in a more open fashion, such as an egg basket, and just cover them with a cloth towel to protect them. Okay, so you have your eggs and you're interested in incubating them and hatching out some chicks for yourself. And you may be wondering, what is an incubator? What exactly does it do? Well, essentially an incubator is a box that holds the eggs while maintaining the temperature, humidity, and oxygen level. So if the mother hen was laying on the nest, this is something she would do for those eggs until the chicks hatched out. And the incubator does this in place as a hen. So if you don't have hens yet, you're able to incubate your own eggs. And different incubators have different capacities and adapters to incubate eggs from different species. This incubator is a smaller incubator. It only holds 7 chicken eggs, but it does have the option where you can get different plates to put in the bottom of it to hold smaller eggs if you're wanting to maybe incubate quail eggs, or even larger eggs if you're wanting to incubate duck or geese eggs. So if you're looking into incubators, that is something to consider. They come in a variety of different sizes. And incubators can also come with automatic turners, which is important. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But the eggs need to turn at least once a day, preferably 5 to 7 times throughout the day. And if you want to get even better, is once an hour is what some people consider an ideal. So most of the times you'll have a job, or maybe you're going to school, and you won't be able to rotate and turn those eggs that often. So this incubator has a disc in the bottom of it that allows the eggs to turn automatically, and you just program it. So even if you are going to be out of town for the day or maybe the weekend, those eggs would still be able to turn. Incubators, they also come with humidifiers, which in this case, this has a water reservoir in the middle of it where you put water to keep the humidity level up, and temperature controllers, which is very important. You will set the temperature on the incubator, and then the incubator should maintain that temperature. However, you will want to check that temperature twice a day to make sure the incubator doesn't malfunction. You also have the option with incubators to get a forced air or still aired incubator version. The still air ones can have inaccurate readings, and the temperature can vary a lot on those. So the forced air ones is more recommended. They're more reliable and have a more consistent temperature and return to the ideal temperature and humidity faster after you have opened them. Maybe you're going to candle the eggs. Okay, so since we've talked about incubators, you have your incubator, you're ready to set it up for chicks. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is clean the incubator. If it's been shipped, or maybe it's sitting in storage, it might have some dust on it, and you wanna just wipe that dust off, make sure it's clean and ready to go for the eggs. If you have an incubator that has been used before, you'll also want to sanitize it to prevent any disease spreading from the last set of chicks to the next, and just take the precaution of cleaning it and sanitizing it before you start running it. And then you're gonna want to let it run for a couple of days before adding eggs, just to make sure that it's gonna keep a consistent temperature and humidity level. And if it does have a turner, that the turner will turn regularly like it's programmed to. Different incubators, of course, have different controls and setting options. So when you get your incubator, you want to make sure to read through the owner's manual to set it up properly and make sure it's ready to go. You'll also want to set up the incubator in a room that is free of drafts and doesn't have direct sunlight. So it doesn't have to be a completely dark room, but you don't want to set it right in front of a window, because that will affect the temperature having that sunlight directly on it. Okay, after setting the incubator up and testing it out for a couple days, you're ready to set the eggs in the incubator. So first off, you're gonna let the eggs warm to room temperature for about 4 to 8 hours. So these eggs, I had them in a room in my house where I controlled the temperature where it didn't get above that 65 degrees. So this morning on my way to work, when I was bringing these eggs, I let them come up to room temperature, so they would be ready to go. This is important because if you put cold eggs in a warm, humid incubator, condensation will form. After you put the eggs in the incubator, do not adjust the temperature or humidity for a few hours. Incubator temperature should be 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit, ideally, and it should only vary a half a degree above or below. So going back to the last point on letting the incubator adjust the temperature, humidity, and build up to it before you mess with it for a couple hours, the only time you would want to interfere is if the temperature gets higher than 102 degrees. Then you'll want to adjust those settings and take it back down. And when you're placing the eggs in the incubator, you're going to set the small end of the egg lower than the large end. So in more of the box style of incubators, as kind of shown on the picture of this slide, the eggs are positioned upright. And this is important because the developing embryo orients itself so the head develops toward the air cell, which is in the large end of the egg. If the chick's head is oriented away from the air cell, this can cause it to not hatch. So in this incubator here, the eggs are set on their side, but there is a slight angle to the egg plate, so the larger end of the egg is still higher than the smaller end of the egg. Okay, so the eggs are set, they're ready to go. During incubation, the eggs need to be turned, as I mentioned before, at least 5 times a day. Once every hour is ideal. So I would definitely recommend getting an egg turner for your incubator. And then you'll want to, again, assure that the temperature is 99.5 degrees to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Turning the eggs, again, during incubation prevents embryo death and unhealthy hatches. And then you'll want to check the temperature twice a day, as well as the humidity. The humidity should be 55 to 60% humidity. If the incubator uses a passive humidity control system, add water to the pan daily to maintain correct humidity levels. And again, that is something that will differ on the type of incubator you have. So you'll want to read the owner's manual and double check the instructions for that. Okay, so we're going to go into a little bit more in depth on the importance of humidity. A lot of times it's easy to focus on the importance of temperature because, of course, it's kind of makes sense that it's really important for those eggs to be kept warm, because if a hen was laying on eggs, her laying on those eggs would keep them warm at all times. But it's also important to remember humidity and continue to check it throughout incubation. Problems that insufficient humidity causes are the air cell to be too large at the time of hatch, the contents of the egg to be too viscous for the chick to turn, the membranes to be too tough to break, or the navel to not close properly. While excess humidity will cause too little water to evaporate from the egg and that condensation to build, the air cell to be too small for the chick to reach during the hatching process, the chick to even drown or be too swollen from the water to turn in the egg, and the yolk sac to be too large for the navel to close completely. So just like it's important to check the temperature every day, it's important to check the humidity as well to hopefully help avoid any of these problems and to have all or the large majority of your eggs hatch out. Okay, and on this slide, I have listed incubation reminders that you can read through that I just wanted to highlight again as we're getting close to wrapping up. So just again, placing the incubator in a room with consistent temperature, no drafts or direct sunlight. If you're using an incubator that has been used before, sanitize that incubator. Of course, wash hands before touching eggs to keep germs, dirt, and oil away from those eggs. Only incubate bait eggs together from species with similar incubation periods. Different species of birds have different periods of incubation. Some are shorter than the 21 days it is for chickens, and some are longer. Keep the small end of the egg lower than the large end, and then also record the incubator temperature and humidity daily. And this will kind of just help your record keeping. If you do have a problem along the way, then you may be able to identify when that problem started or where that problem occurred from easily. And then ensure that the humidifier is working or that the water pan is also filled. And then, of course, turn the eggs at least 5 times a day until 3 days before the chicks are due to hatch. And then at this period, you're going to increase the ventilation during the last third of incubation and increase the humidity to 65 to 70% at the hatch stage, and provide a cloth in that incubator. So as this slide ended on the hatch stage, that's what we're going to talk about next. So the hatch stage is the last 2 to 3 days of incubation, and that is when the chick hatches out of the egg. So once it reaches this 3 days at the end of incubation, you're going to want to take the turner out and lay a towel, like a cloth or a hatching basket, in the incubator for the last couple of days. And this is so when those chicks hatch out, they have a surface that they can get more traction on. And this incubator, this disc, is just the egg turner that rotates. So at the last couple days of the incubation period, about day 18, I will take this out and then put a cloth down on the plastic surface and then place those eggs back on it so those chicks are ready to hatch. While I have the incubator open, right here in the middle on this style of incubator is the water reservoir. And it does have a cover, which is very important when the chicks start to hatch. You want to make sure that cover is on so there's no potential of the chicks drowning in the water reservoir. In the last couple of days during incubation, again, you're going to not turn the eggs, and then you're going to decrease the temperature 1 degree Fahrenheit. So if it's at 99.5 degrees, you'll decrease it to 98.5 degrees. And then you'll increase the humidity to 65 to 70%. And if you're needing to increase the humidity, especially in a larger incubator where there's a little bit more room, you can place a wet sponge or cloth in the incubator to help increase the humidity. And this table, it's a little bit hard to see, but the publication this table comes from will be linking online so you can visit it. But this just demonstrates that there's different incubation periods for different species, and it also has the ideal temperature and humidity for each species during incubation and then also during the hatching stage. Okay, so at this time, I'm not going to plug in the incubator and get it going at the moment because we're here at the Fab Food Lab at the Independence Community College, and the incubator won't be staying here. It will be going back with me so I can monitor it on a daily basis, but I did want to demonstrate placing those eggs in the incubator. So we would open the incubator up, and this egg plate, you can see it kind of has a little egg shape of where each egg will go. It holds 7 chicken eggs. So we'll put that in. So all of these eggs, I checked them when I got them and made sure they were in good condition. However, they did have the car ride over here. So it's good to double check the eggs again and then also wash your hands before handling them to make sure your hands are clean and there's no chance of contamination. So on this egg, you can see this end is the larger end, and then this is the smaller end. So on this incubator, you're going to position it so the larger end is to the outside and the smaller end is to the inside, because eggs sit on their side in this incubator, so there's a slight tilt to the tray. And then you would just do that with each egg, placing them. And if you have the other style of incubator where the eggs are upright, then again, the smaller end would just be positioned down. These eggs are from Buff Orpington hens, and that is why they're the brown color. If you're wondering what chickens to get and what might be the right fit for your goals, then feel free to contact me at the extension office and I can give you some more information on the different breeds. Okay, so once all the eggs are in the incubator, you will close the incubator to make sure the top is on securely. And then if I was going to start incubating these right at this moment, I would go ahead and plug the incubator in, and then I would monitor the temperature, leave it alone for a couple hours, but making sure it doesn't get over 102 degrees and reaches that ideal temperature of 99.5 degrees, and then also reaches the correct humidity level. Again, you'll want to set up your incubator a couple days before you put the eggs in to make sure everything works properly. And also, if it's a new incubator or it's the first time you're using the incubator, that everything's programmed correctly, that you set the temperature and the humidity that you want, that you set how many times you want the eggs to be turned every day. And then this incubator also has the option to set a temperature and humidity alarm that will go off if that temperature gets too high or too low, and also if the humidity level isn't ideal. So later today, I'll start this incubator, and then throughout the next 3 weeks, I will be giving updates on the eggs, what stage of incubation they're in, and we'll also be going over how to candle eggs, and those will be on the Wildcat District's extension page. We'll be doing those Facebook Live updates, but those will also be recorded and shared on both the Fab Food Labs and the Extension District website. So at this time, I would like to open it up for any questions. You can go ahead and type those in the chat box if you would like.
We do have a couple of questions.
Okay, great.
The first one came in on the first slide. What happens if you get eggs from your own flock?
Yeah, that is definitely an option, getting eggs from your own flock. It would be the same as getting them, as I covered, getting them from a friend or an individual locally. So depending on the size of your flock, if you have a smaller flock, you may only get a couple eggs a day. So as long as you'll get the amount of eggs you need to incubate them, you can just store them for 7 days without having to worry about cleaning them. Just keep them in a safe space and covered so they can stay clean. And then again, don't wash those eggs off because that will affect the egg surface. And if you're gonna store them for more than 7 days, then again, as I explained before, you're just gonna wanna rotate that egg carton. But yes, incubating them from your own flock is definitely an option. I know some folks also do that if they're giving eggs to an elementary school class to incubate.
One more question. Can you incubate budgie eggs?
Can you spell that?
They've spelled it Budgie. I think it's a bird, like more of a tweet bird than a chicken bird. Parakeets.
Parakeets, yes. Sorry, I'm not as familiar with parakeets, so I didn't recognize the term budgie. I learn something new every day. Yes, you can incubate parakeet eggs. You would just need to get an incubator that is designed to hold them. This incubator, for example, it has different size discs you can get. So you would just want to order one that will hold those smaller eggs. And then again, they would have a different incubation length than chicken eggs do. and possibly also have different temperature and humidity requirements. So you would want to find out those and make sure the incubator is set to those requirements before you start incubating them.
That's all the questions we have.
All right, well, if anyone has any more questions, they can contact me through the Wildcat Extension District office. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Make sure to follow the Wildcat Extension District on Facebook for those Facebook Live updates as we follow along these eggs through the incubation and hatching stage. And I would also like to thank the Fab Food Lab at the Independence Community College for inviting us to join them to offer you this program today and allowing us to use their facilities to record this program. Do we have one more question in the chat?
Sydney is commenting that they're incubating eggs. They're on day 13 or 14, and 7 of 19 are growing. And the other 2 were infertile. So
cool.
She's already working on.
That's great. Good luck with your eggs. And those are a really good percentage. I know it's kind of disappointing when you find those eggs that aren't growing, but you have most of them that are growing and doing good. So that's great. Good luck. Chicks are a lot of fun.
And then Danielle, she's doing this with 20 elementary classes.
Wow, that's great. That will definitely keep you busy.
Where can they find your contact information if they've got questions that come up?
You can find my contact information on the Wildcat Extension District website. You can reach me at the Independence office. That phone number is 620-331-2690. Or my email address is adaven, ADAVEN, @ksu.edu.
Thank you for joining us today in the Fab Food Lab. We hope your time with us was valuable and perhaps has sprouted your desire to further explore food-related education and opportunities. Good things are growing at the Fab Food Lab. Follow our progress at fablabicc.org.